Good evening, Paterson. Good evening. Paterson, New Jersey, stand up. We are unmuted. If you're seeing this live, let me get a thumbs up. Let me know you're here. Leave me a comment saying, Kimmeshia, I'm here. Give me a thumbs up. We have a very, very special show prepared for you tonight. I ask you to share this live. Today, we have a very special guest on tonight as we continue into our election cycle. And we know we have another election coming up June 2nd. So I want to encourage you guys, like, share, follow. If you see this live, please share it with your friends and your family. Let them know that we are unmuted. Community, come on in the room. I want to give time for people to join the live. Come on in, join the live on this Thursday night. This is not usually our regular scheduled night for our lives, but as I stated, this is a special broadcast curated specifically for you. So community, please share this live because I have a very, very special guest on tonight. He is a candidate for Passaic County Commissioner, and I really want you guys to talk to him, engage with him, and get the answers to the questions that you have. Tonight, we're going to educate ourselves on the role of the county commissioner, and we're going to talk to this young man, the candidate for Passaic County Commissioner, about his platform and how Paterson fits into his role if he's elected as county commissioner. So community, join us again. Please like, share, unmute it with your family and friends. I'm very, very excited to have a special guest tonight. As you know, Unmuted was created specifically for the community. This is all about empowering, educating, and us as a community being able to advocate for ourselves and being able to get the answers to the questions that we have, the solutions that we need so that we can see our city thriving and doing well. And so I'm very excited tonight. Please like, share this live with your friends. I want to bring him onto the stage. Let me bring him on. Guys, welcome. I have with me tonight Ali. Tell me if I'm saying it correctly. Ali Aljarrah.
Correct.
Thank you. I don't have the applause. So I'm just gonna do a fake applause.
Applause for you.
Applause for you. Welcome to Unmuted. Ali, I am so happy that you agreed to come on and be part of the solution. And one of the solutions is educating our community, right? Because a well-informed community can make very informed decisions, especially when it comes to the polls, right? And so I want to say thank you for being here today and talking to the residents of Paterson. But this isn't just Paterson, because I see residents from all over New Jersey, all residents from Paterson that live in other states who still have influence, with their family and friends here in the city. And so it's important, it's important for a platform like this for our community. So thank you for agreeing to be here. Community, like, share, follow, share this live. We are Unmuted. Ali, thank you and welcome to Unmuted. I'm going to give you an opportunity right now before we get into our interview to introduce yourself to the community. Let them know who you are, what you are running for. And I'm going to give you the floor right now. Introduce yourself and talk to our community for a bit.
Kimmeshia, thank you so much for having me. This is, like I told you before, this is so important to have spaces like this, considering the fact that in New Jersey, there isn't too much of a journalistic space or a commentary space that actually talks about politics, especially in North Jersey. So thank you for all the work that you do. But yes, no problem.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, keep going. Because, I can talk. I can have to. This is, look, I know when you say journalist, I'm like, journalist? I'm a journalist, right? But I'm doing my best to, one, I want to make sure because like I said, I could talk all day. Zelly's on, my family, friends, everybody knows me. I could talk. But I really want to give you this opportunity to speak to the community and letting them know who you are. And just, because this is important. I know we just had an election, May 12th. We just had our municipal election. The votes were just certified yesterday. And so Andre Saya is the certified winner for mayor of Paterson, New Jersey. And then we have Liliza Mims, Dr. Liliza Mims, Maritza Davila, who were reelected, and newcomer on the scene, Miss Paula Alford, who was elected as councilwoman at large. And even when we think about Miss Alford running against very well seasoned, incumbents, and we look at, we can almost compare a little to you, right? Because you're a Democrat, but not running under what many of us say the machine, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm gonna get right into that question, right? That's actually
Yeah.
like my fourth question. But since I segued into it, I'm gonna get into it, right? Because what I did notice about you as I did my research and study you, and just finding out who you were, how long you've been, around. So you've been around for a long time, so you're not new to this, right? And so that's wonderful to know that you've been doing the work of the people for a long time. But you're not running under the Democratic Party. However, I did notice that you're getting really big endorsements, right? I see Raz Baraka just endorsed you. I see Bernie Sanders just endorsed you. A few organizations throughout Passaic County have endorsed you, which is great, right? But in a time now where you see our community is really, I'm a Democrat, right? But I don't feel like I'm too party affiliated, if you get what I'm saying. And you hear
Yeah.
that a lot from the community. They want to pull away from the old party. They want to see something new. They want to see people infiltrate that system, right? Because they want to see that the people's needs and voices are being heard.
Yeah.
With those big endorsements that you've gotten, how can the people really trust that you're not that person, so politically aligned, but your voice is more about the people and not so much the people who are endorsing you? What can you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question
Mhm,
because the reason why I'm running and the reason why I decided to opt out from being backed up by the machine is several things, right?
mhm,
Number one, it's the fact that if you wanted to get the machine's, backing, you would have to go through the screening process in which it is made up of municipal chairs, to which a lot of them, when I've had conversations with them, they've indicated to me that they're going to go with whoever the chairman picks, right?
mhm,
And that's just the system that is set up. And quite frankly, and this is something that we put out, during the first time during the first weeks of the campaign, we believe that was a genuinely undemocratic process, right?
mhm,
You have about 16 to about 20 people in a room deciding on who should be the Democratic candidate. And if you're to go through that screening process, you would have to sign a pledge where essentially you would have to drop out if you're not the chosen one, right?
mhm.
And from my perspective, I think two things. Number one, again, it's genuinely undemocratic. And number two, there really isn't a real primary if we do go through this process,
Mhm.
right? And as we saw from the work of both Assemblyman Kenyatta Stewart and
Yeah.
also with the work of Ana Lilia Mejia,
Mhm.
you don't necessarily need the backing of the establishment in order to win, right?
Right.
It's the grassroots organizing. It's actually speaking to the people and their
Mhm.
issues. And ultimately, with this candidacy, we reflect that, and we want to continue the work of both Kenyatta Stewart and Ana Lily Mejia, where we're
Mhm.
building on the idea that this is a grassroots movement, right? The best example, in New Jersey is we're seeing this in Essex County, right?
Yeah.
Where you have like a whole slate of new county commissioners because there is this understanding that there needs to be
Mhm.
change, right?
Yes.
And you need to have the county representation reflect the demographics, and especially
Mhm.
one that is more younger. I mean, the average age in Passaic County is about 38 years old, right? That is remarkably young.
Yes.
And ultimately, when it comes down to this campaign, to answer the question of how is this campaign not going to just fold into the establishment afterwards,
Right.
right? I think it comes down to, hey, look, we ran a primary where, the establishment has the backing of Mikey Sherrill, has the backing, like the candidates, right? They have backing of Mikey Sherrill, Cory Booker.
Yeah.
Um, like those are the big weights that they have. We're running independent of that. We have the backing of Ras Baraka, who had a massive influence in Passaic County. Although he did not win it outright, if the
Mm-hmm.
progressives ended up coalescing behind him, he would have won, right? And also the backing of Bernie Sanders, who is quite popular in parts of the county. I would say,
Right.
the entire county. Um, and that's what this campaign takes inspiration from, right? It's the inspiration of being able to build up something that is grassroots that really
Mm-hmm.
hasn't happened before on a county commissioner level. Obviously, there was a primary that happened in 2024. I would
Right.
say this is more ideologically aligned, where it is focused on progressive values. And ultimately, how do we make Passaic County move into not just the 21st century, but more
Mm-hmm.
specifically the 2020s and the 2030s? How do they get people in our generation involved in understanding that, the county has a budget of $460 million. And,
Mm-hmm.
the way I like to define what a county commissioner is, it is a government advocate with a budget, right?
Yeah.
They are essentially a combination of both a mayor and a council position
Mm-hmm.
all in one. And some of them sit on a board and decided things such as the roads, the county college, PCTI, along with senior services and social services. So, to summarize my answer to your question, right? This campaign, the reason why it is gaining traction is because if we do get elected, we are going to be the independent voice. We are not just going
Mm-hmm.
to go with whatever the establishment says we should go along with, right? And
Right.
ultimately, it helps us out in terms of being able to pressure the establishment on issues and policy that what this campaign is representing, to get that passed through
Mm-hmm.
or implemented, if we do get elected next year.
And I think that's what the people want to hear. They want a candidate that's accessible, that they can hold accountable, that's focused on the people. And I think, from what I've seen, especially, social media is like, it's like our eyes to the souls and the needs of the people. The people are speaking, and they're not happy with a lot of things. A lot of them aren't engaged in the voting process because of things like the machine. And I'm not here to promote any, the machine or independence or anything like that. Like I've said, and I say to my community, that I'm here to just promote them being well informed and understanding, who's out there, who's vying for these seats, and that they do their due diligence in picking the right person for them. But what I know is that they want, a lot of them are saying, and I think Zelly said this too, they want independent candidates, not people highly connected. So this is why I knew it was important to ask that question, because even though, you're not with the machine, some people might look at a Bernie Sanders or look at Baraka and say, well, they're still politicians, they're still part of that system. And they
Yeah.
want to know that although you may be getting these endorsements and they're encouraging your independence, and for the people want to know that you are for the people, that these aren't, deals we're making, or you gotta hold up, accountability to other people because they endorsed you, but you remember why you decided to take this leap. I don't know if you know, I ran for city council some I think 2024 election. It takes a lot to say yes and say, I'm going to put my hat in the race. And for you to do it on the county level, that takes a lot, personally, emotionally, mentally. And people want to know you're doing it for the right reasons, right? And so
Yeah.
I thought that question was important, because I did see that you didn't take or go through the endorsement process with the party. And I think people get confused with that too, because even though you're not with what we consider the machine, the party, the machine, you're still a Democrat,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
So,
many
and
people thought I was running as
right,
an independent candidate in the
independent,
general election.
exactly.
And I'm
Hmm.
like, no, I'm an independent candidate in the primary. I'm not backed
Right,
up by the machine.
right. And I think people don't realize that too. It's like, oh, well, when you're thinking about it, right? Everybody shouldn't run, but when you have made that decision, you know what, I'm going to do it. Um, you don't need anyone to pick you, right? If you have the support of the community, you've been doing the work, right? You have the movement. You don't need a party to say, oh yes, you can run. You know what I mean? Like you can run, right? But you
Yeah.
want to make sure you making the right decision, because it's one thing, you can't just run off of passion. Am I correct? Right?
Correct. Yeah. You have
You
to have
know?
strategy. You have to, I
Yeah.
always like to say, you have to lead with your heart, but make decisions with your brain.
Exactly. And now we have a lot of passionate people out there, but I don't think they realize what more it takes. It takes a little more than passion. And so, I commend you on pushing past just the passion and, coming with the strategies in your team. Now, I want to get into, as before we get into more questions about your platform, a lot of people don't really understand the role of a county commissioner.
Yeah.
Why do me as a Paterson resident, why do I need to be concerned about county commissioner? What does that have to do with my day to day? What does that have to do with me taking my kids to school, the roles, and all of these different things? So before we delve more into your platform and the questions I have, can you give the community an idea, or educate us and inform us, what is a county commissioner and how does that affect a county commissioner affect the day-to-day of a Paterson resident?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you asked that question, because I always open up my speaking engagements with, does anyone know what a county commissioner is? And a lot
Mhm.
of times they say, a lot of times their hands are down. Um, so I like to say that, like I said earlier, it is a combination of a
Mhm.
mayor and a council person combined into one position, sorry, and
Mhm.
7 of them sit on a board, right?
Right.
And they decide on things such as the county roads, the county college. Like yesterday was PCTI, sorry, not PCTI,
Mhm.
PCCC in terms of their
Mhm.
graduation, and you saw the county commissioners there, giving either speaking engagements or sitting up on
Yeah.
stage, right? They decide on the budget. They decide on things for PCTI. They decide on things such as the roads, the social services, right? A lot of folks who I've been engaging with in Patterson, they ask me about Section 8 housing. They ask me
Right.
about things that are related to, I spoke to someone last week at the Paterson bus station, and this is a common thread, right?
Mhm.
Where people are asking me, what can you do to help me out in terms of my housing situation? And 9 times out of 10, they get sent over to the social services at Passaic County, right?
Right.
So they handle things like that to make sure people are being housed.
Right.
And also senior services as well, the socialization of our seniors to make sure that they have a social, healthy lives, and also to include in things like medical checkups, for example. So they do a lot of things, right? And they have a
Mhm.
budget of about $460 million, right? So for residents of Patterson who are asking themselves, why does this county commissioner race matter? It
Mhm.
matters a lot because the county is very much involved in the city of Paterson, right? And when it comes down to the goals of the city, right? A healthy relationship between the county and the municipality is always a good thing, right? And if I do become county commissioner, Paterson is something that's always going to be on the top of my mind, because of the fact that Paterson is really the key to success for Passaic County, right? It
Mhm.
is the county seat. It is it's the largest municipality in the entire county. And it's unfortunate that what people have seen and what I've noticed, because I was pretty much an observer this entire mayoral and council election, is
Mhm.
the fact that people are asking for more things coming from the city, right?
Right.
And there are certain things that I think the county can do to step up and really help out the city, right?
Mhm.
One of our platforms, right, or one of our policy positions is that we need to expand out transportation in the city of Paterson and other
Yeah.
municipalities as well, right? And the reason being is that it is basic economic theory that if you have a good transportation system, then you
Mhm.
have a good economic system, right? And the reality is that when you talk to Pattersonians who are trying to pick up their child after school, it takes
Yes.
them 20 to 30 minutes or even more than that, even though it's supposed to be like a 5-10 minute drive.
5 minutes away. Yeah.
And some of those roads are on county roads. So the question is, what can we do to actually decongest our roads? What I'm proposing is a combination of two things, right? And this goes into the economics of it. There needs to
Mhm.
be better regional planning of exactly what the city should be, right? And more specifically, if we're able to provide mass transit
Mhm.
to Pattersonians, right? Because we already do so to Clifton and Passaic residents with the microtransit program. That is one way where we can get people or cars off the road, right? The other way of doing so is working with NJ Transit to see if we're able to understand where are the areas that people are going to more frequently and how can you get them to get them to use the bus instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, trying to take cars off the road. And ultimately, when it comes down to a county commissioner, I like to say that we are a government advocate with a budget, right? With
Mm-hmm.
a budget, we can decide on what things can be, which resources, or yeah, which resources that areas can go to. And at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, if we need to advocate on a state level or even on a federal level, then we have the position to do so, right? And I do think that going back to the economics, going back to transportation, what Paterson needs, and the county has done a study on this, is what is called a Paterson Newark light rail. And
Right.
what that does is that it essentially connects Paterson, the third largest city in the state, to the largest city in the state, which is Newark. And in between, there are
Mm-hmm.
cities along the line. And in Paterson, there's proposed, if and I'm happy to drop the link below after this,
Yes.
after our interview. This study basically shows that there are 3 stops in Paterson that this light rail can go to, and those are economic hub centers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we actually implement this light rail, then jobs will naturally follow, right? Because that's the other issue that Pattersonians have, which is that they feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's not enough jobs here. And a lot of the jobs are usually centered in either the public sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is usually government jobs, and also, educators as well, and then nonprofits and nurses. Um, and then there's some small business jobs, but really what Paterson needs to do is bring in more revenue, right? And by having a better transportation system, one that centers around transit hubs, small businesses are naturally going to come, right? And that's really the way to stimulate that economy. And then just one last thought, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
bring it back
Yeah,
over to you, Kimmeshia.
definitely.
The other thing that needs to happen with the idea of building up the transportation is which areas in Paterson are like the best economic hubs, right, to transfer people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm visibly Middle Eastern. I'm also Muslim as well, so I go to South Paterson a lot, right? And I
Right.
also go to the Bengali section a lot too, right? But Paterson also has the Dominican Avenue, right? They also have Broadway. And I was having a conversation with Zelly Thomas in the beginning of this campaign, and we were talking about how Broadway should really become Black Main Street, right? And like we really need to invest in that area, because right now what we're seeing is that there isn't too much investment going on, right? We're
Not
seeing a
at
lot
all.
of yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of developers going in there and trying to build up the luxury apartments, right?
Yes.
Which I get why it looks nice, but at the same time, I hear the residents when it comes down to overdevelopment, when it comes down to the infrastructure of the
Yes.
schools. And ultimately, community needs to have access to those spaces. So it shouldn't
Yes.
just be luxury apartments. I think there should be
Mm-hmm.
condos that people can actually afford, because let's face it, Black and brown families, they historically don't have any generational wealth, right? And we need to build up that infrastructure where people have access to build up that generational wealth,
Yes.
and ultimately create communities where it's not just housing, but there's a grocery store there, there's a small business there. So in general, if we actually take a step back and say, where are the areas where there's major commerce, or where there could be major
Mm-hmm.
commerce, right? And at the same time, focus on the transportation, and also focus on how could the county work with the states and also municipalities to invest to beautify the streets, and also
Yes.
designate areas as corridors for businesses. That is one way, and that is really the best way the county can get involved and help out the city of Paterson.
Well, I mean, you've said a mouthful. I don't think a lot of us didn't realize how connected the county is to, the infrastructure and just the overall thriving of Patterson. One of the things you brought up, I live in the fourth ward, which the Broadway, for a lot of the sections of Broadway, is part of the fourth ward of Patterson, and we have long said for a long time, like you mentioned, the sixth ward, and a lot of people get a little, it's almost like a battle when we bring up the sixth ward. And I said this in my last episode on Sunday. When we look at the sixth ward, is a model for what a lot of our business districts should look like. And when I think about Broadway, you mentioned the sixth ward, the Middle Eastern sections of Paterson. You mentioned the Bengali section of Paterson. You mentioned Dominican Way, but when we talk about real investment into Black small businesses and highlighting, African American culture, all of those different things, and not really seeing that, people want to know that someone is in a place of power. When we say power, we're talking about a person that's able to really affect change within your community. That's real power, that they're thinking about those people. They're thinking about those areas. So for you to bring up Broadway, and when I think about business district in that area, I think about Broadway and I think about Rosa Parks Boulevard.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw out a plug for my girl Shauna Marriage, who has a better market right there across from Deacon Davis in our community garden. That area too. I'm looking at, when I think about the Sixth Ward, I don't see why that model can't be mimicked there to highlight the African American communities and their small businesses. And so it's important that when we have people in these positions like the county, that you're thinking about that. Because you know what, Ali, as a Pattersonian, I've been here my whole life. I'm 50 years old, right?
Oh,
I
wow.
grew up yes, I'm 50 years
I thought
old.
you were in your 30s.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So when you talk about the community college graduation, I was actually in attendance last night because one of my daughters graduated last night. And I'm also an alum and a professor at Passaic County Community College. But when I think about, I grew up here, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in the first ward. I currently live in the fourth ward. And I want to see the real investment of the community. I want to see it represented across all sectors of the community. Some people say, oh, we're segregated, but I look at it more as we're very multicultural, and there's nothing wrong with us all having a piece of our culture being exhibited in a beautiful way, like we see in the Sixth Ward, like we see in the Bengali communities, in these areas where you might see a lot, like I'm going to go back to Black communities owning businesses. We want to see that highlighted and taken care of. So for you to bring that up, that's a very great point, because the communities want to see that. And I saw I pinned this comment that Zelly said when you were talking about the development, and you were like, it looks nice, and I was just like, and Zelly was like, because it doesn't. It takes away
Nice.
a lot of it. Right, nice. It takes away from a lot of green space, open space,
Yes.
air, and things like that. And so we really want to see things leveled out for everyone, and that everyone is represented fairly and have the ability to have a great quality of life and thriving. I want to move on a little, and community, I want you guys to know, I see your questions coming. I do have a section prepared for you guys to ask questions, but I think after this question, I'm going to go to some of your questions so that Ali can have an opportunity to answer those. But I want to make sure some of the things that I have prepared from my research and hearing from the community that is mentioned. Now, one of your platforms you're running on, I see the working family.
Yeah.
Right, and you discuss transit, which is a very important part of working families getting around. Everybody doesn't have a car. Everybody doesn't have the ability to have a car or want a car. I'm one of those people. I don't want a car right now, right?
Yeah.
And so my children, I grew up in an era where we took the bus. So for me to jump on the bus is not a big deal. I'm like, I can jump on the bus, I can jump in the cab, whatever. But everybody doesn't have access to a cab. So the truth of the matter is, New Jersey Transit is the most reasonable, affordable way for us to get around. And when you're talking about working families, right? And that's that's what you're running on. I see that, for your ballot, right? And when we talk about the county, many of our residents, especially in Paterson, where we're working full time, some of us have multiple jobs. I have a master's degree. I have multiple jobs, right? So it's not just people with higher education or people with lower skill set. It's hard out there for everyone on every income level, right? And so we have multiple jobs struggling with food costs, rising rents, because we're looking at that development that's really not resident
Nice.
friendly. It's not resident friendly. We got childcare expenses, right? Right now, New York is doing some great things over there, but that's not what we're seeing over here in Paterson. So a lot of people are paying a lot for childcare expenses, transportation, healthcare, right? And so residents are a lot of us are living check to check, right? And where you're fighting for the working family. So how can the county government help ease some of these burdens that we see with childcare, food prices, transportation? You already mentioned transportation, right?
Yeah.
How would a vote for Ali Aljarrah directly translate into stronger support and better outcomes for working families throughout Passaic County? But I want to specifically get into Paterson. Mhm.
Yeah. I think like I mean, that's a question that I get a lot from just all
Mhm.
residents, whether they're from Paterson or West Milford or Wanacue, right? We're seeing this and like for those who like don't know too much about like the demographics and or the
Mhm.
geographic differentiation in Passaic County, right? The lower part of Passaic County is very urban. Suburban
Yes.
is like the Wayne, Little Falls, Valley towns, and then you have the rural areas up in like Wayne or not Wayne, up in West Milford, right?
Mhm.
So this is something that is common along everything. I mean, we're running on affordability. The first thing that I would like to do as soon as I get to the county commissioner board, and I hope they
Mhm.
do this, you know, if I don't get in or if I, you know, if I do become the nominee, I hope they start this out much sooner, is start a task force called the Affordability and Economic Development Task Force, right?
Mhm.
This is something that was established in Westchester County back in April, right? Our campaign has been talking about it since January,
Okay.
ironically enough, right? And the reason why it's important to set something up like that is I think the issue is that when it comes down to affordability in Passaic County, it is complex ultimately at the end of the day, right? And I believe, like I said before, a county commissioner is a government advocate with the budget, right? Even
Okay.
without the budget, we are an advocate. We have the ability, we have the power of the pulpit, right? To bring in our state senators, to bring in our state assembly people, to bring in the council people, right? And to also bring in our congressional members as well, to really come together along with advocates and also community leaders to figure
Mhm.
out what are the main issues, right? And you hit it on the head. It is the rent. The rent is too damn high, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't make sense that Paterson is more expensive than Hackensack, which is Hackensack's the county seat for Bergen County, right?
Exactly.
So when you look at that, I think what we need to do is bring everyone in together to basically address these issues, right?
Mhm.
So when it comes down to housing, right, does it make sense for us to do we have the ability to freeze the rent as Zohran Mamdani ran on, right?
Right.
Unfor- Unfortunately, from at least the county level, there isn't any way where we can do that, right?
Mhm.
But what we can do is to avoid people from getting kicked out of their house, right? And
Mhm.
what am I talking about specifically? I'm talking about right to counsel, right?
Right.
If for those who don't know what right to counsel is, what it means is that if you are facing eviction, essentially, and this is something that's being advocated in Jersey City and also Hoboken as well, where if you are about to be evicted from your house, essentially what happens is that you have a lawyer that's going to guide you through the process. And the benefit of that is that it doesn't guarantee for anyone to not be evicted, but what it does is that for the individual who's going through that process, which by the way happens to be a lot of low income families,
Yes.
essentially what it does is that they will get the legal guidance on exactly how to proceed through it, right?
Mhm.
And that's an investment in people, that's an investment in working families, because what's unfortunate is that what we have today is that people work in 2 3 jobs and they
Yes.
still almost can't make the rent, right? The other aspect of it too is that what is happening is that in Passaic County, the reason why the rent is going so damn high is in Essex County, Hudson County, Bergen County, we're facing the price pressures, right?
Yes.
And because Passaic County doesn't have the business industry that those other counties have, right? Naturally speaking, it's only going to go up, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is what you call a low supply of real estate, meaning that there isn't a lot of housing in Passaic County, unfortunately, right? Like even houses in, you know, my house in Little Falls, right?
Mhm.
My family paid about, you know, I think like 200 $300,000 for their house in like 2006. Market crash happened, went down to about $150,000. If they were to sell their house today, it goes up to $700,000, right?
Mm.
That's insane. That is
Yeah.
absolutely insane. And then we're wondering, why is the rent so damn high? It's
Right.
because the value of housing has gone up. And the
Right.
issue is that we need to build more housing. But the issue that we see, especially in Paterson, is that there is the issue of overdevelopment, right? So it is a balancing act. what you do when you have this convening of both housing advocates, of real estate leaders, of just policy experts, is that we can figure out a strategic way of how do we build more housing without putting pressure on the infrastructure. Because what we saw back last year in the summertime is the water main break or the water
Yeah.
infrastructure crisis that we had, right? And there's still debate on how did that happen, right? Was it the earthquake that happened in Pompton Lakes that caused the
Mhm.
decaying system to happen? I don't know. This is just, these are theories that are happening. But what is definitely needed is that convening of people of how do you balance all that out, right?
Right.
Because if you look at anywhere else across the country, it's actually getting cheaper to own housing because of the fact that, you know, they don't have proximity to New York City like we do, right?
Right.
When I was actually living in Austin, Texas back in 2023, it was cheap. It's cheaper now to live in Austin than it is when I moved to Austin, right? In
Wow.
terms of rent. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's just a lot of housing. So, in terms of housing, that is something that the county commissioner board can do to convene that, right?
Mm.
In terms of groceries, right? It's kind of hard because on what, like, my belief at the very least is when it comes down to making sure that food prices are stabilized, what I've proposed is a county sponsored grocery store, right? And essentially what that does is that in cities like Paterson and Passaic, there are what is called food deserts, or
Yeah.
what is really truly called food apartheid, right?
Mhm.
Because deserts are natural, apartheid is man-made, right?
Yeah.
And when you have a county-backed grocery store, what is that like implemented in areas in Paterson, like the Fourth Ward, right? Because we're talking about, we know we need to build up more housing, and we also talked about how there needs to be mix. When you add a grocery store there that is backed up by the county, or it doesn't
Yes.
necessarily need to be backed up by the county, but just there needs to be a grocery store in those areas. People
A
have access
major
to
grocery store, right?
exactly
Mhm.
like a shop, right? Um,
Right.
then you have the ability to essentially, provide fresh foods and groceries, right? And I know that, and I'm blanking out on the name right now. There is a community farm or community garden that is in Patterson that is doing great work.
Yes.
I think we need to
That's
continue
with
on that
Deacon
line.
Davis on Rosa Parks Boulevard. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, that type of work needs to continue because
Yes.
the reality is that when people are able to grow their own food, they'll be able to like eat it, right? And
Yeah.
we know that in a lot of like low income areas, they're gonna eat something that is, what they call empty calories, right? It's junk
Mhm.
food, and that's the other issue that happens in a lot of like low income areas. But I do see Patty Kane
Yeah.
asked the question about, is there a potential for rent control legislation in Patterson?
Patterson. Yes.
Believe it or not, there is rent control, right? Um, Patterson does have a strong, like they do have a strong policy, but do they have strong enforcement? That's the question.
That's a huge issue here. Because we have a lot of legislation, we have a lot of things on the books, but the enforcement is an issue. And so, yeah, Patty, we do have those things, but that's where we're fine. So, you know, you so Patty, the enforcement is the issue to help answer. But if you have more to add, Ali, to her question, that would be great. But Ruby, yeah, Ruby Clark, you know all about it. It's the enforcement,
Yeah.
because even when you brought up the legal counsel, like I said, I'm 50 years old, right? And so, I remember a time when when people were going through eviction, the only access they had to any legal anything was like going to legal aid, which could be a very taxing process. A lot of people ended up, being evicted, getting these evictions on their records, which makes it almost impossible.
Yeah.
Right. Even and so because someone had wrote in the comments about speaking up about their housing and how they're labeled as complaining, and they get all these negative things. Because
Yeah.
even if I was to hold the rent from my landlord, which I don't have to, and thankfully I have a great landlord, right? But I've had to hold rent from my landlord, take them to court, and that's on my record as an eviction process. And it becomes an issue for the renter. now they can't rent, or they have to rent at a higher rental rate. Someone wrote in the comments they're being charged these rental fees that are enormous. It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So the legal counsel, what's the difference between the legal counsel that you would implement and legal aid? Because some people might think that's the same. What makes those two things different?
Yeah,
Or are they?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm not even sure if there's a difference. That is just me being very upfront
Mm-hmm.
about it. But what
Yeah.
I do know is that what the county can do is provide resourcing on legal guidance, right? Or
Yes.
basically be able to go through the process of making sure that you are able to stay in your home without the
Mm-hmm.
worry of like looking out for a lawyer, hoping because
Right.
we like a lot of people know what that process is like because you know you're shelling out thousands of dollars just to be able to stay in your home. But for the most part, people, if someone just put into the comment, like it's not even worth putting in that money, and you know you're going to try to do what you can to stay where you are.
Right.
And especially now when we are in an affordability crisis,
Yes.
it is, and we're talking about quality of life, which is what Pattersonians have, you know, for the last, I mean, I've been in Paterson in terms of like my involvement since I actually worked for Tap Into Paterson back in 2017. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing that people have stressed out is quality of life, right?
Yeah.
And I think having people stay in a house is better than being on the streets. And we're seeing this already as soon as you enter Paterson when people are already tenting up, right?
Right.
And we don't want to see that, right? We don't want to see people out on the streets tenting up. We want to make sure they're inside of their house. And I think when we're talking about putting people first, this is an example of putting people first.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, for a budget to have like the way I would look at it, right? And the reason why I think this is possible is that the budget, you know, the county has a budget of about $460 million, right? We have about I think $112 million in reserves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, to bring on a lawyer with benefits and everything out, if you bring on somewhere between 3 to 5 lawyers, we're talking about a budget of still less than $1 million, right?
Right.
I look at that, I'm like, that's an investment in people. And I think, yes, is it politically strategic, especially for the establishment, to do something like that? No, because a lot of the developers and landlords, they're going to complain and be like, well, we're going to put money and vote you out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's the benefit of having someone who's independent, who's running, going back to your original question, right? Someone who's independent running for this nomination. And then we saw this in New York City with Zohran Mamdani, right?
Yes.
It's the matter of when you're running, when you are truly building up people power and you're just the in between the people's voice and then the positions of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you'll be able to advocate for. And I'd rather take the politically tough position of saying, this is what I wanted, this is what I would push for, this is something that I would advocate for. And I would rely on, or not rely, but I would work with the people who want to see legislation like that either pass, whether it is the county, or I'm more than happy, and I said this to union organizations as well, to put my body and my voice on the line if it's something that needs to be done on the
Right.
municipal level as well. So that's really the importance of not only the county commissioner board, but also this entire race as a symbolic. If we're looking at it from like a symbolic aspect, right? You have the politics of
Right.
the old versus the politics of the new.
For those of you that are just joining, I have Ali Aljarrah here. He is running for one of the seats for county commissioner, and you're running to be put on the ballot for the November election, correct? So
Correct, correct.
June 2nd will determine if he's voted for in high numbers, that he'll be on the ballot, right, to run for the official seat of county commissioner, and running against the machine. I must add that, because to me that's a big piece to add. Running not independently, away from being a Democrat, but not running under what a lot of us have grown up to know. Because, like I said, I'm 50 years old, so I know a lot about the machine. And been under the regime of the machine for a long time. And I think people right now are saying no more. They want to see more independent thinkers that are coming out without these high political and developer and big business connections, but really more someone with their ears to the ground and the hearts of the people. And so, Ali Aljarrah is here today, community. I have a couple more questions, but community, if you have questions, please start typing them in. and Ali will start answering them. But if not, Kimmeshia, I come prepared. Okay, I did come with the questions, and so the real Ali said, I mean Zelly's saying the real question Patterson wants to know. Okay, yeah, this is a real question. All right, I'll have to pin it. You know why? Because okay, I think what people are feeling or seeing, they're seeing a lot of developers highly invested in the politics of the cities and counties that they're building in, right? And it's
Yeah.
one thing to come into the city to provide to help provide housing, but when we start seeing developers paying thousands of dollars, families of developers paying thousands of dollars into these politicians or people who are running for these seats of power, the people like myself, like Zelly, and those on, they'll start to question, well, where is your loyalty or your work ethic? Where is that lying? Is that going to lie with the ones that are backing you financially or the people who actually have the power to vote you in?
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to take money from the developers. I'm not. But I think people equate that to if you take money from the developer, then that means that's who you're working for.
Yeah.
But you want my vote. So, I mean, how do you answer that? Because, I don't want to say, oh, you're bad if you take it. But the people that's how we equate it to. Oh, if he's taking money from big business, if he's taking money from these developers, who are getting these 30-year abatements that is taxing to the taxpayer,
Yeah.
then how can we truly believe that you're not doing what we see the machine is doing? That is it going to
Yeah.
be the same old, same old? How do you answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing to keep in mind is that, when it comes down to a county commissioner position, when it comes down to developing and things that we have approval of, it only is relevant to, or I wouldn't say relevant, but it's only directly affecting public, county owned land, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a proponent of being able to like not only take inventory of what is county owned land, but at the same time also coming up with, I'm in favor of building housing on county owned land, but not just housing, but also other community or economic hubs in those areas,
Mm-hmm.
right? But obviously, this is something that, being quite honest and being quite transparent,
Yes,
that is
please.
something that still needs to be taken, that's something that still needs to be taken into inventory, right? So that is on the county commissioner aspect of it. As someone who's been, again, like as I said, I've been an observer this entire Paterson election, right? Mainly because of the fact that this is the county's largest city. And I do
Yes.
have an affinity to Paterson because it is the city where I was born. It is a city that I tend to frequent a lot, right? And not just to, go to South Paterson where, I hang out with my
Yes.
Habibis there.
Right.
But also, I love going to the Great Falls. I go to the Paterson train station. And I like to, it's a nice, for me at least, it's an area for me to walk around and really truly see what is going on, right? Even before I decided to run for county commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer the question about, am I going to take developer money? The answer is, quite frankly, no. As far as my understanding is, I don't think I've taken any developer money, or at least Paterson developer money.
Mm-hmm.
And really on the effect of, will taking developer money affect my decision making? The answer is no, because at the end of the day, like, I'm accountable to people. If someone is going to try to threaten me or try to,
Mm-hmm.
basically try to pressure me to agree with their plans or be silent on something, you can have 110% assurance that that's not going to affect me or move me in any way. What is going to affect me, move me in any way, is what the people say, right?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, when you're running an insurgent campaign, you have to understand that you are relying so much faith on the people. And
Yes.
even if you don't win, it doesn't mean you lose faith in people. It just means
Right.
that you didn't get to reach out to enough people or convince enough people of your vision and your plan and of your candidacy for whatever you're running for, right?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, to answer your question, it's not going to affect my decision making. It's not going to affect my decision making if, if in the next election, a developer is going to try to pressure me like, hey, Either I'm going to give you the max out, which is
Mhm.
$5,500, right? And if you don't accept this money, then I'll give it to your opponent and try to run a negative campaign against you. I'll be like, okay, go ahead, run a negative campaign against me. I mean, there's really nothing out there to really go against me. And at the
Right.
same time, like, thank God that I have surrounded myself with good people, such as, Zelly Thomas, who is in the
Yes.
comments right now, supporting
Mhm.
us, along with other community leaders who truly believe in the idea of a campaign that is not only built by advocates, but also ran by advocates as well.
Yes. Yes. And you mentioned, that Paterson is the biggest city in the county. Excuse me. And that will answer a lot of the questions when of the community. Why do so many people come here? Right. It seems that a lot of people come here when it's time for voting. They come here around election time. They come here, all of those things, shaking hands, kissing babies, all of those things, you
Yeah.
know. But then when the election's over, our community feels like we're not considered, we're not thought about. And so it's important for our community to know that, we welcome you. Yes, visit the Sixth Ward, visit the Great Falls, visit the train station, all of those great areas, right, where you can see where things need to be improved and the model of what that improvement can look like. But I invite you to visit. You mentioned the community garden, which is Green
Yeah.
Acres Farm on Rosa Parks Boulevard. I invite you to Deacon Davis is always open to that, because not just Green Acres, but to see the area and the community in which that thriving garden is located, right?
Yeah.
And then across the street we have a Better Market, who speaks directly to what you were mentioning when you talked about food desert. And Shauna will say we're more of a food swamp because we don't have access to a lot of healthy, um, financially accessible, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff, like we said, when we say major grocery store, it's because we want to have competitive prices that people can afford. When you go to some of these privately owned grocery stores that aren't major affiliated, the price, we see a lot of price gouging, right? And so
Yeah.
a Better Market answers to that by providing affordable produce to the community. But one of the things she said to me was that we have a food swamp because we're so congested with, you know, takeout,
Bodegas.
McDonald's. We love the bodega, right? Because the
Yeah.
bodega adds again to the culture.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of the things beyond some of the other things, they can be overly priced too when it comes to those really much needed produce and grocery items. You need a major grocery store for stuff like that. And so I invite you, to come out into those communities and also see the development in real time. The fourth
Yeah.
ward is one of the most highly developed areas in real time. Come, call me. I'll take you out there.
Let's do it.
Zelly's on 10th Ave and on Broadway with Black Lives Matter. So he sees it all from each corner. We could go on a walking tour. I can definitely give you an idea, and you can hear from the people because and I say all that to say because again, you explained what the county commissioner job is, the 400 plus $1 million budget that you guys have, that the county has, that directly affects some of the infrastructure here in Paterson, right? And so one of the questions I had, I want to get into the infrastructure,
Yeah.
right? Because I think people, when you drive and you say county roads, and people like county roads, but I don't think a lot of us notice those signs. I noticed them, but you notice those signs that say 571 County Road, this one, County Road,
Yeah.
that one. Where my church is located, my church is on the corner of Holzman and Heldon Avenue. Heldon Avenue is a county road, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we think about the county roads, right, we think about infrastructure, road conditions, street maintenance, right? Traffic, sidewalks, and overall neighborhood quality, right? Because especially when we think about public safety,
Yeah.
and all of those things speak into that, right? And people really believe that falls solely on the city. right? DPW, the mayor, and all of those things. But the county plays a big part in that too. Can you help residents better understand how the county connects to our infrastructure issues here in Patterson? And from your perspective, how can the county government better support the city in addressing some of these issues that we have?
That's a fantastic question to ask
Hmm.
because, again, something that we have centered this campaign on is not only transportation, but how
Hmm.
it relates to infrastructure, right? And specifically when it comes down to transit infrastructure, what we're advocating for, right? Because let's think about it from a very human perspective. What we're advocating for, or what we want the county to implement, is what's called a Vision Zero approach, right?
Okay.
And what a Vision Zero approach is essentially the goal of having zero fatalities on the roadways, right?
Hmm.
A report came out, I believe, from 2024 or 2025. I have to check back the numbers, and I've checked back the numbers. I'm more than happy to put a report into the comments after this. Essentially, the lower part of Passaic County has one of the higher levels of fatalities on the roadways, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, in comparison to up county, the lower part of the county, it's a matter of just the roads are just they're not I guess say there's not enough signage on the roads, and at the same time, it's also the fact that it is more car centric instead of it being pedestrian cyclist centric, right? Because
Hmm.
what we're seeing is that a lot of our like people, folks such as you, they don't necessarily take, they don't have their own car, so they rely on public transportation.
Yes.
And if you don't rely on using busing, then you're more likely to walk, and you're more likely
Hmm.
to take or to use your bicycle, right?
Yeah.
I would love for Paterson because it's even though it's one of the county's largest cities, it is still objectively or relatively a smaller city compared to Newark and Jersey City.
It's small. It's large in the fact that we have a lot of residents. In
Correct.
regards of size, we're still small. I can walk from here to here,
Yeah.
in less than an hour. So it's small because considering Newark and Jersey City when you think
Yeah.
about that. So go on. Hmm.
And to answer Kamar's question about what's considered the lower counties, right? The lower part of the county is Paterson, Passaic, Clifton, Little Hawthorne, not Hawthorne, Haledon, Little.
Eldon, yeah.
Basically, any city that is south of Wayne is, to at least by our definition, is the lower part of Passaic County. Um, but more specifically, when it comes down to Paterson and everywhere else, right? Um, you are a paper. I'm just reading Zelly's comment. That's funny. But the reality is that what we need to do, and this is something the county has been doing, right? Is they're building more sidewalks, and they're also building
Right.
more bicycle lanes, right? I think that's great. I think we need to continue doing that because the reality is that that is one way where you can take more cars off the road, right? And at the same time, it also it actually lowers down fatalities, right? But the way that you truly lower down fatalities is that there needs to be dedicated bicycle lanes, right?
Hmm.
In the city of Paterson, the challenge is that the roads are narrow, right?
Yes.
So it's a matter of, are we going to now convert two-way streets into one-way streets? And exactly how is that going to look like, and how is that going to affect the flow of traffic, right? McBride Boulevard, for example, is a county road. And as we saw from a few weeks ago, a few weeks ago, you had a poor 80-plus-year-old woman get killed because she's a crossing guard and she got hit by a car, right?
Hmm.
So the way that you actually reduce that is by creating is by reevaluating, reassessing the roadways, and at the same time try to center it on pedestrians and cyclists, right?
Right.
And doing that, again, you not only are lowering down the potential fatalities on the roadways, and at the same time you're actually lowering down the traffic because you're incentivizing people to use either mass transportation, bicycles, or actually building up more sidewalks, right? And
Right.
that goes into the public safety aspect of it, right? Because if you are building up those bike lanes, those sidewalks, etc., what you also need is better lighting, right? And as we've seen, if you have good street lighting, then that actually reduces down crime because people don't, feel like they're being seen, right?
Right.
I'm not for putting more police or more sheriff's officers on the road, like in those spaces. I do think that you do need at least some, But I
Mhm.
don't think that's a long-term policy. I think that's just a policy that is reacting to what is going on, right?
Right.
For something that is going to be sustainable, you need to incentivize ways where people are not going to feel the need to, commit crimes, right? And
Right.
that goes to the quality of life question, right?
Yes.
So I from the county commissioner perspective, right, when it comes down to infrastructure, if you do implement a vision zero approach, right, and you get the planning board, and more specifically the not the planning board, the planning department, to work with these cities, right, to figure out what are the best ways to not only make sure the flow of traffic from county road to municipal roads to also state highways as well integrate
Mhm.
with each other, but if we also have a goal in mind of we want this to be more pedestrian friendly, we want this to be more cyclist friendly, that is really the best way to improve our infrastructure, right?
Right.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind is when it comes down to the potholes, right? Something that
Yeah.
the city of
That,
Patterson is
listen,
it's
Patterson
notorious.
is lately. I mean, we this election cycle has brought us, has had its pros, and we've
Yeah.
seen a lot of roads being resurfaced, but it's still a big issue in Patterson with these potholes. So, speak to that, please.
Yeah, I think it's, you have there's always going to be a funding problem, right? For at
Right.
least all municipalities, because it does cost money to repair potholes. I do think though that if you have a lot of people complaining about potholes, it is worth putting additional investment behind the roadways to
Yes.
at least, make sure it's completed, right? I mean, in municipal government, as long as people's garbage is being picked up, there's no potholes
Mhm.
on the streets, and people are able to walk from point A to point B. No one's really going to complain, right?
Right.
The only other thing that they'll complain is how high taxes are, but if
Mhm.
they feel like the quality of life is worth it, it's not something they're going to really hearken on, but it's something that, they're not going to say, I pay all these taxes and and I have to go to the car mechanic to realign my
Yeah.
suspension, And
Right.
again, that's money out of working families' pockets.
Right.
So these are things that, like, at least for myself, if I get on the county commissioner board, it's something that I will be not only advocating for, but if residents come to me and say, hey, this is something that needs to be fixed, even if it's not on a county road, I'm still going to get in contact with, folks at the municipal level and say, like, hey,
Right.
you guys really need to do this. Do you guys need resource? Like, what can we do to make sure that this actually gets addressed?
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's important to know where the county comes into play when it comes to those things, right? Because you know, some of it is the responsibility of the city, but the county does have its responsibility as well, considering those county roads. And specifically, when you talk about, because like I said, my church is on Postman and Heldon Ave, and we see those bicycle lanes, there, and unfortunately for us, and I think that's more of a municipal issue, is the double parking and the over parking because
Yeah.
people aren't really able to access it. I think it's the buy-in into that of us sharing the road and allowing those seats because not only does it help with congestion because like you said, if we have less cars on the road, more people maybe riding bikes, taking public transportation, but even people being able to utilize the sidewalks. Some people was complaining about the sidewalks that are connected to these county roads. You can't even get through them, because they're
Yeah.
not, they're just under developed or whatever. So it's good to know and for people to understand that especially when they see those signs that say county road, to remember if Ali is elected, Ali is responsible for this
Yeah. I mean,
when
it's a
he
count.
overspeaks, So now we know, community, when you see county road, you're like, okay, so maybe I won't yell too much at the mayor for this. Let me go send Ali an email and let him know, get these plows over here to this county road right now. So
Or
I
just
mean,
yell at me.
listen,
It's okay to yell
yeah,
at me. I try to be as like
exactly.
I welcome all accountability.
Right. Listen, because at the end of the day, like I said, Unmuted is all about educating our community. So because we want to be able to hold not just ourselves, but those in power accountable to their roles and their jobs. And so if you're elected, we want to know that you're going to be doing the job that you're supposed to be doing and that our needs are being met in this way. Now, community, our platform is only allotted for an hour. And so I'm going to give us a couple of more minutes. If you have a question, I want you to start throwing your questions into the comments. While you're doing that, Ali, what I like to do, even though we're doing a special broadcast today, I always like to highlight a community organization. Again, today I'm going to highlight Grace Gospel Church. I'm going to put this flyer here. Oh, so they're having June 6th, Ali. I'm sure June 6th is Wear Orange Day, where we speak against gun violence and violence intervention. We have throughout the community, you'll see many organizations hosting events throughout the community just to promote unity, family, love, and to kick against violence, which we've seen an uptick of it over the last few weeks. And on Saturday, June 6th, Grace Gospel Church, along with Holy Tabernacle Apostolic Church, Victory Temple Church, and a lot of different organizations from within the community will be hosting one of those events at 1 p.m. It'll be in their church parking lot. They're located on Montgomery Street, right across the street from Vera Ames Park. And so we invite the community to come out, bring your family, your friends. We'll have free food, free giveaways, community resources for you, community resources, and everything of course is first come first serve, and everything there until we run out. But we'll be there from 1 o'clock. We'll have a kid zone. We have a 3-on-3 basketball tournament happening. And so I want to say to the community, one, great things happen in Paterson. We have great organizations within Paterson. In the comments, I see Ruby Clark, I see Zelly, I see Sharif Bug. These are people who are doing great things within the city. And so like them, Grace Gospel Church is hosting this event on June 6th. This is Hope Day. And so I encourage the community, if you can't come to this event, I know Healing Collective, Paterson Healing Collective is hosting an event. 3 events throughout the city. We have Project Reconnect with Teddy Martinez. They're hosting an event. So that day would be a great day. Ali, if you're elected or not elected,
I'll be there anyway.
I invite you to still come and meet the people. And it's actually only a few blocks away from the community garden. So maybe you can even take a walk down there and see what that's about as well. So community, don't forget June 6th is Hope Day at Grace Gospel Church, 1 p.m. So we're going to give a hand clap to Reverend Anthony and the great things that she's doing within the 4th Ward. Thank you. And so I see the questions are coming in, Ali. I guess they said, no, Kimmeshia, we're not going to let you guys off this 1 hour. So I'm going to throw out a few questions. I'm not going to hold Ali too long, but I'm going to ask some questions because we do want some answers to the questions that we have, and I want to give you guys the opportunity to do that. And so I see here, let me go through them. All right,
I think Vera Ames had a very good question.
Wait.
Honorable Vera Ames.
So Miss Ames, we love Miss Ames. Miss Ames has been here we go. Oh, and that's a great question. What is the plan for Camp Hope for recreational other than Garrett Mountain? That is a great question. Like I told you, I'm 50 years old. I myself have been able to experience Camp Hope. I met a lot of friends that are my friends today from going to Camp Hope and meeting them. A lot of who I am today speaks from my experience at Camp Hope and how well we were treated there, and just the love for the children in the community. I learned from Camp Hope as well. So what is the plan for Camp Hope for recreational other than Garrett Mountain? Is there a plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good question. I will be upfront and say that when it comes down to specific plans for Camp Hope, our campaign has not come up with anything that is specific, right?
Right.
But I will say that the work that is involved with Camp Hope in terms of being able to bring kids into other environments and be able to expose them to new things is super important, right? And it goes down to really speak about the diversity in our county, right? And I think the idea of, bringing people up to, West Milford and Ringwood and have them actually explore the nature, I think is very, very important, because of the fact that we know that in cities like Paterson, it's, it becomes so much, especially during the summertime, I guess you can say a pressure cooker, right? Where there's just
Yes.
so much happening. So I would essentially put more, I'm in favor of putting more investment behind that, because I do
Mhm.
think that, especially for our children, they need to be in environments where, there needs to be more activities, right? Well, a lot of things that, or a lot of the comments that I see from Pattersonians on Facebook, and also meeting them on the streets, is, essentially, what can we do to provide more spacing for our children, right?
Right.
Because they want to get their children off the streets. And I'm in favor of it. I think this is the part that this goes to the economic aspect of it. This goes to quality of life, is that there needs to be more third public spaces, right?
Yes.
And for those who don't know what a third public space is, a third public space is something that is not your home. It is not your workplace. It is a social gathering for people to come
Mhm.
to, right? And, I see, when it comes down to Paterson City Council meetings, people are talking about, we need more recreational spaces, right? We
Yes,
need
we do.
more of that for our children. I'm in support of that as well. How
Yes.
does it look like from an implementation level? That is something that, I will be honest with you, it will require more conversation to figure out exactly what part of the budget could be allocated for that. But
Yeah.
overall, I'm in favor of that. But I do think that Paterson, Passaic, Clifton, and other spaces, but more specifically for the city of Paterson, because that's where a lot of the comments come from, is that there needs to be more spaces for our children. Not just for our children, by the way. It needs to be for young adults. It needs to be for our seniors. It needs to be for working families. Because at the end of the day, if you're just at home or you're
Yeah.
going to work, again, it becomes a pressure cooker. And a lot of the violence that we do see comes from the fact that people don't have any place to go.
Mhm.
So I think funding, continuing funding, increasing funding for those recreational areas, I think is very important. And I wouldn't just do recreational, because not everyone wants to, play a sport, right? Not everyone wants to be active in that respect. People want to, you know, as simply as we see this in South Patterson, fortunately and unfortunately. Fortunately for those
Fortunately, yeah.
who are in South Patterson, but unfortunately for other parts of Patterson, where, there are coffee shops that exist, but it's not nearby enough, right? And if they have to take a car and, traffic becomes an issue, people are going to be turned off. So I am in favor for, at least developing, and especially when it comes down to, and I think this is something that I think the city council can do, right? This is not necessarily a county thing, but it's something that I
Mhm.
would advocates on the ground, which is, hey, if there's a developer who wants to develop someplace and they're getting an abatement, well, we want you to put whether it's a coffee shop, a bookstore, or any sort of public meeting space, a community center, right?
Yeah.
Wherever there is
Yeah.
housing. So people in the community, in the surrounding areas, have access to it. Like, and not to go on a little too much, but the area in which the chemical fire that happened a few weeks ago, right, where that building got burned
Yep.
down.
That was on the corner of Holzman and Heldon Ave. That was actually right across the street from my church. Yes. The dye company. Mhm.
So I think, and I actually was looking at that area about 2 years ago when I was more involved in sustainability. And for those who don't know what
Mhm.
sustainability work, it's the field of work that is focused on how do you integrate environmental justice, economic justice, and community all together in one, right?
Mhm.
At a very, very high level. And I was looking actually at that building because I'm like, oh, that's like the perfect building to not only do social housing, mixed use as well. But now that it got burned down and something has to be built up, I think that's the perfect space, especially in that area, to do something where there's
Yes.
housing and then there's also some sort of community space there.
Yes, I definitely agree, and I think Miss Ames asked specifically about Camp Hope, um, you know, but I think overall, just making sure that resources are going into recreation for our children, making sure that funding is allocated, so that it trickle down to that because one of the people in the comments stated, and you said too, a lot of our people we're dying in the streets. There's no recreation, no place for our kids to really go. Even one of the comments stated, even for young adults. And I visit the sixth ward frequently. And my girlfriends and I will go, we'll park the car, we'll walk around. This is late at night.
Yeah.
All right, because in that area they're able to be open later than some areas that are mandated to be closed due to violence, right? But if we had those different things with the infrastructure, like the lights, like the crossings, like all of these the parks, all of these different things that can improve quality of life, we can see a big change in the city of Patterson. Now the county is also in charge of funding for our seniors as
Yeah.
well. And so one of the advocates for senior services is Sharif Bug in the great city of Patterson, and he wants to know how if you're elected, placed on the ballot, and then elected in November, how would you improve senior services like the Meal on Wheels and senior daycare, etc. But what attention would you pay into senior services? Because like our children and our seniors, they are the most underserved,
Yeah.
right? I don't know what it is about our babies and our seniors that we don't sometimes, it seems like those that have the power don't find the value in investing in those two demographics, which is very important to our community. What attention would you pay to senior services?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think one thing that I want to avoid doing is just say that I know what's going on with senior services and these are the
Correct.
bad things that are going on, right? Because I'll be honest with you, I have not had the ability to really talk to folks at the senior centers that are county ran to get an idea of how
Mhm.
how things are ran, right? From my understanding, at least the times that I have visited the seniors, like the senior services, or not senior services, the senior centers where these services are available. There are like there are like once a week there's some sort of medical check-in. I know that
Mhm.
they do socializing or senior socialization events for our seniors. Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
One thing I will say good about the county is that they have not cut anything from Meals on Wheels, right? Especially when we see on the federal level it being cut. As county
Good.
commissioner, I will make sure that when it comes down to our seniors, if there's any cuts that are going to be made, I'm the first one that's going to disagree with those cuts and say we need to figure out a way to get that money, right? And if it
Mhm.
means going to our reserves and using our reserves to make sure that our seniors are being fed and also, keeping the transportation as well for our seniors, I will be in full support of it as well. Um, so in terms of improvements, it is something that I will say has been difficult for us to assess because of the fact that we don't have access to those spaces, right?
Mhm.
If anyone has anything that they want to, highlight for us that they think our campaign should know about and be an advocate for, please reach out to us and let us know. But that is just me being very honest about, our entire campaign when, we do want to, this is a huge part of the population that we do take care of. Um, and for those who want to give us the information or for those who want us to let us know exactly what's going on, our campaign's open to it. And we're more than happy to have a conversation during this election or even after this election, no matter what the results are.
I think that's wonderful, and I would encourage you to even meet with Sharif because he does do a lot of work with our seniors. Because I know your boots on the ground, so even making sure you have those people in place to speak to those needs, right? Because you don't know everything, and you want to make sure you surround yourself, and I know that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with a team that can speak to all of the needs of the county. But I'm all about Passaic County, but my heart and blood pumps for Paterson, New Jersey. So I want to make sure my community is taken care of. I care about all people, but I want to make sure home is taken care of as well. What use is it to save everyone else and your community is going down in flames, right? And so we want
Exactly.
to make sure that Paterson is paid attention to, right? Because and we don't want it to just be a stop on the election trail, but we want this to be a place where action is taken to make sure that we improve our quality of life, in the life of all of our residents. Now, community, I'm gonna end here. What I want to end with this last question, Ali,
Yeah.
and I want you to close us out. I
Yeah.
definitely want you to let the people know where they can find you on social media and everything like that, right? But I want you to just speak to this question. When you think about the future of Passaic County, specifically, I want us to get into Paterson.
Yeah.
What is your vision for the community, and what message would you like to leave the residents tonight?
What I think, or our vision for Passaic County is a and more specifically for the city of Paterson. It is a city that is the heartbeat and soul of the entire county. It is the place where not only residents in Paterson are hustling and bustling, it's also a place where people outside the county can go to, right? And it's not only going to the Sixth Ward for Palestine Day or anything related to that sort, right? It's truly going there because of the history, of the culture, and
Mhm.
God willingly, the business activity that happens there, right? We've seen this happen in cities like Jersey City. We've seen this happen in cities like Newark. But what Passaic County has managed to do is avoid the gentrification, right? Outright, you know? And I think the vision for Paterson is being able to economically grow by having a strong transportation system without being gentrified, right?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that, the special ingredient that is going to be required is having the involvement of not only the advocates but also the residents themselves. It's the people that are going to build up the city, and I truly do believe that. So as long as we work together, and it's not just a campaign thing, right? I think it's a combination of coming up with strategic goals that we have for the city to make sure that it is economically growing, right?
Mhm.
Because I think the one thing that I have not seen, being truthful, right? And it may offend some people, is the fact that I did not see any goals that people had for Paterson for 2035, 10 years from now, or
Right.
2040, you know? And when you don't have goals and you're running on campaign promises that, like taxes are a big thing and taxes shouldn't be relied on a small part of residents in Paterson, right?
No.
I believe that it needs to be something in which more money is going to come in, so it alleviates the burden on the current taxpayers, and at the same time, it also really alleviates the burden on the rest of the taxpayers in Passaic County. That's
Mhm.
why my belief is when Paterson succeeds, the entire county does succeed, right?
Yes.
And I do believe the county has a responsibility to be a partner in that lead to make sure that it becomes economically viable, and also has an awareness for the social justice issues that are in Paterson, right?
Mhm.
We still have folks who are unhoused. We have folks who badly need help because they have an addiction issue, right? And it should not be treated as crime. It should be treated as a healthcare crisis, right?
Yes.
So it's that empathy, it's that love, and ultimately it's that foresight and vision that this campaign truly represents and truly embodies. And we hope that if we get on the county commissioner board, this is not just a seat in which Ali Aljarrah occupies. It is a seat in which the folks who are advocates and believe in a future and a bold Passaic County occupies as well.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for expressing and explaining your platform to the people. Also, educating us on the role of county commissioner for those of us who were unsure what exactly a county commissioner does. I want to commend you on taking, the charge and saying, you know what, I'm going to fight against the machine and be an independent voice for Democrats like yourself who are looking for independent thinkers, people who are connected to the heart and the voices of the people. That's all the people want. They want to know that they're cared for and that they're being heard. And so I want to say to you, thank you for joining us on Unmuted. Tell the people where they can find you on social media, and where will you be next? Are you doing any debates? Inform them about the early voting before June 2nd so they're
Yes.
aware. Yeah.
So there's multiple ways to reach out to me. I'm actually going to put into a comment right now on the live stream because I don't know why I can't do it from here.
Mm-hmm.
Of the best way to reach me is they'll give me, wow, 117, 145 comments. That's a lot of
Yeah,
comments. I just
yeah.
saw it right
Oh,
now.
there was go. Ali, they was going. It was hard for me to keep up. I was pinning as much as I could, right? But you can always come back and watch it and speak to the people and answer their questions there. So that would be great, guys. I don't know. Am I? Oh, there you go. Yeah. So it was a lot of questions. So Ali, tell them where they can find you on social media, and community. I will, because I'm following him. I tagged him on my Facebook. I will make sure he's tagged to my social media. Ali for Passaic County is on, I believe that's Instagram. And
Yeah.
then he's tagged to this as well. So you can tag him on Facebook. He's tagged to it. So you can click and follow him there. On Instagram, he's also tagged Ali for Passaic County. Click and follow him so you can stay up to date on what he's doing, what he's talking about. He has some great videos explaining his platform in
Yeah.
detail. So I encourage you to go visit his page. Ali, thank you for
No,
being
thank
here
you.
today.
And by the way, I just want to, so if you want to reach out to us also, like
Mhm.
I just commented on here, friend request me, let's be friends. Whatever happens in this election, I want to continue building not only these relationships, but ultimately building up our communities, right? This is not a campaign in which you're only going to see me until June 2nd, and then it's hasta la vista, baby. It
Right.
is, it is simply, not even simply, but it is something that is for the long term. And ultimately, I do believe in not only the city of Paterson, but I do believe in Passaic County. I have like I said, an affinity for it. And ultimately, our community can only become stronger. So as long as we work together and we share ideas of what we want to see happen. If you want to see me, if anyone wants to meet me up tomorrow, I am going to be up early. I'm going to be at the Paterson Broadway bus station tomorrow morning, from
Okay.
about 6:30 a.m. to about 9 a.m. And then I also have to double check where else I'm going to be afterwards, because we have a very busy campaign schedule, but I
Yes.
am going to be spending a lot of time in Paterson in the next few days. So if anyone wants to meet me there, chat it up, let's do it. I'm more than happy to. We're trying to be as accessible as we can
Yes.
and try to
Good.
talk to as many people as we could.
I mean, I'm from Paterson. One of the things I know that my community thrives off of is being able to touch the people that are have the job of making sure that our needs are met. And so that's a big deal to my community. We're very, in now I don't want to say in your face, but we like to know that you're accessible. You're not just some wizard behind a curtain. You know what I mean? That this isn't some great Oz type of thing, but that our leaders and potential leaders have your ears to the community and your ears to the ground. So people like to know and see you, out of sight, out of mind. So they do want to see you.
Yeah.
So I do. Community, meet him where he is. And again, I encourage you, come through the fourth ward. Definitely check out the garden. And across the street is a better market. I gotta always plug my girl Shauna because she's doing great work there. But Ali, again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Community, I want to thank you all who tuned in, who submitted your questions, shared comments, participated in this conversation, because immunity is all about you. And tonight we have Ali Aljarrah, who is a candidate for one of the seats for the county commissioner. And again, we're going to continue tomorrow night with our special broadcast. And we have the incumbent Orlando Cruz joining us tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So I implore you, community, come out and ask your question, because he is vying to be placed on that ballot as well. Okay. And so, community, we have the power. Ultimately, it's our vote that puts them in those positions to do what we need for us. And so, community, I just want to say thank you, Ali. Thank you again. Community, we are unmuted. Paterson, New Jersey, stand up. Everyone have a great evening. I hope to see you on tomorrow at 8 p.m. Same time, same place. Love you all. Have a